Aphorism 56. He who, prompted by some enigmatic desire, has, like me, long endeavored to think pessimism through the bottom and to redeem it from the half-Christian, half-German simplicity and narrowness with which it finally presented itself to this century, namely in the form of Schopenhauerian philosophy. He who was really gazed with the Asiatic and more than Asiatic eye, dawned to the most world-denying of all possible modes of thought, beyond good and evil, and no longer, like Buddha and Schopenhauer, under the spell and illusion of morality, perhaps by that very act, and without really intending to, may have had his eyes opened to the opposite ideal, to the ideal of the most exuberant, most living and most world-affirming man, who has not only learned to go on and treat with all that was and is, but who wants to have it again, as it was and is to all eternity, insatiably, calling out de capo, not only to himself, but to the whole piece and play, and not only to a play, but fundamentally to him who needs precisely this play and who makes it necessary because he needs himself again and again, and makes himself necessary. What? What would this not be? Circulus vicius Deus. Aphorism 57. With the strength of his spiritual sight and insight, the distance and, as it were, the space around man continually expands. His world grows deeper. Ever new stars, ever new images and enigmas come into view. Perhaps everywhere on which the spirit's eye has exercised his profundity and acuteness has been really but an opportunity for its exercise, a game, something for children and the childish. Perhaps the most solemn concepts, which have occasioned the most strife and suffering, the concepts God and sin, will one day seem to us of no more importance than a child's toy and a child's trouble seem to an old man, and perhaps an old man will then have a need of another toy and other troubles, still enough of a child, an eternal child. Aphorism 58. Has it been not observed to what extent a religious life, both for its favorite labor of microscopic self-examination, and that gentle composure which calls itself prayer, and which, in a contented readiness for the coming of God, requires eternal leisure or semi-leisure, and I mean leisure with a good conscience, inherited by blood, with itch no longer unfamiliar with the aristocratic idea of degrades, that is to say, makes soul and body common, and that consequently modern, noisy, time-consuming, proud, and stupidly proud industriousness educates and prepares precisely for unbelief more than anything else does. Among those in Germany, for example, who nowadays live without religion, I find people whose free thinking is of differing kinds of origins, but above all, a majority of those in whom industriousness, from generation to generation, has extinguished the religious instincts, so that they no longer have any idea what religions are supposed to be for, and, as it were, merely registered for existence, in the world with a kind of dumb amazement. They feel they are already fully occupied, these worthy people, whether with their businesses or with their pleasures, not to speak of the fatherland and the newspapers and family duties. It seems that they have no time at all left for religion, exceptionally as it is not clear to them whether it evolves another business or another pleasure. For they tell themselves it is not possible that one goes to church simply to make oneself miserable. They are not opposed to religious usages, if if participation in such usage is demanded in certain cases by the state of interest. They do what is demanded for them as if one does it so many times, with patient and modest seriousness, and without serious curiosity and discomfort. It is only that they live too much aside and outside even to feel the need for any for and against in such things. The great majority of German middle-class Protestants can today be numbered among these indifferent people, exceptionally in the great industrious centers of trade and commerce. Likewise, the great majority of industrious scholars and the entire university echelon of theologians whose possibility and presence there provides the psychologists with ever more and ever subtler enigmas to solve. Pious, or even merely church-going people seldom realize how much goodwill, one might even say willfulness, it requires nowadays for a German scholar to take the problem of religion seriously. This whole trade, and as said above, the tradesmanlike industriousness to which his modern conscience obliges him, disposes himself to as a superior, almost good-natured merriment in regard to religion, sometimes mixed with a mild contempt toward the uncleanliness of spirit, which he presupposes wherever one still belongs to the church. It is only with the aid of history, not from his personal experience, that the scholar succeeds in summoning up a reverent seriousness and a certain shy respect to religion. If he intensifies his feelings towards it, even at the point of feeling grateful to it, he still has in his own person not so much as a single step closer to that, but still the existence of a church or pity, perhaps that reverse of it. The practical indifference to religious things in which he was born and raised in, as a rule, sublimated in him into a caution and cleanliness, which avoids contact with religious people and things. It can be precisely the depth of his tolerance and humanity, which came about to his little presumptuous dwarf, the dwarf of Mob, the dwarf of Brisk, the busy head, and the handyman of ideas, of modern ideas, from the boundless, stupid naivety of childishness that the scholar believes. Aphorism 59. He who has seen deeply into the world knows that the wisdom there is in the fact that men are superficial. It is in their instinct for preservation which teaches them to be fickle, light, and false. Here and there among philosophers as well as artists, one finds a passionate and exaggerated worship of pure forms. Let no one doubt that he who needs the cult of surfaces to that extent has at the same time or another had that calamitous attempt to beneath them. Perhaps there might even exist an order of rank in regard to these burnt children, these born artists who can find pleasure in life only to the intention of falsifying its image. As if it were the long drawn out revenge on life, one could determine the degree to which life has been spoiled for them by the extent to which they want to see its image falsified, attenuated, and made otherworldly and divine. One could include the amores religiosi among the artists as their highest rank. It is in the profoundest suspicion of fear that the incurable pessimism which compels the whole of millennia to cling their teeth to religious interpretation, the fear born of that instinct which makes sense of one to hold truth too soon before mankind as sufficiently strong, sufficiently hard, and as an artist of pity. The life in God would in, in view of this light, appear as a subtlest and ultimate product for the fear of truth. As the artists worship this intoxication before the constant falsification, as the will to inversion of truth, as untruth at any price, perhaps there has still up till now been no finer way of making man himself more beautiful than pity. Through pity, man can become, too, so great a degree of art, surface, play of colors, goodness, that one no longer suffers at the sight of him. Welcome, everyone, again to my channel, and I've invited Andrew, the man himself. How's your how was your time last time and before now? That in between phase.
The last time that I appeared on your channel and today, is that what
Mm-hmm.
you're asking? Right. It's been great. It's awesome. When I hear uh when I hear um Nietzsche talking here through you, I recognize a man of another time who's grappling with what the hell is going on here in his world because he's living in a time of change. And we're living in a time of change, absolutely. And we're in a different historic epoch, and it's hard to understand. It's hard for me to understand, and I'm not a close reader of Nietzsche, so it's hard to to place where he's coming from. But what I am enjoying and appreciating in the guy is hearing a an honest man seriously grappling with the fact that things are not what they seem to be. They're not what they seem to be. And the people who are the conventional Protestant, ordinary German people that he was talking about there are, you know, they have a either, if I understand correctly, either no religion or a very they've lost the sense of a living connection to it. So it's not very alive, not very alive to them. So I struggle with that question, those questions too. How to find something that's alive in the, how do we understand our time? So we're um, trying to study the psychology, the psyche, as Nietzsche was back then. So I'll just say that to get on the map and to explore it really, in a sense, like how I'm curious how Nietzsche's words are impacting you and how they can be used to look at our own time or how we can look at our own moment as well.
What you said, some people would think it's not rhetorical, and it's not. Of how does Nietzsche both impact me and a person as you? There's one word that comes to my mind: foresight. He, as you said, he was in a time where the mentality was altering drastically, both on a physical and a psychological or religious and moral
Yep.
level too, that he saw. And once he saw this wheel of fortune or unfortune, how you see it, how it rotated itself, he had this foresight that it either worsens after me or it continues to be this for another time. And he saw that wheel propelling forward and forward as we are in the fourth industrial revolution with AI and modernized technology versus the third industrial revolution of both the first and second world war and how they play on the world scale.
Yep. And of course, he was before that
Hmm.
in the 19th century. Yeah, but it's I've done for people today like myself, like we have some interest in those from the past who delved into those questions, and we try to place them. Nietzsche's one. Personally, I really was touched a lot by Kierkegaard, a Swedish guy. Yeah, he was Swedish, and
Danish.
was he Danish? Okay,
Hey,
thank you.
Danish.
You're right. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, Gregory, that's right.
You're
I was
welcome.
right. I knew he was up there, and he's not Norwegian. I think it's no, he's Danish. You're right. but he's a guy I like a lot, and he was also very religiously preoccupied, and more overtly religious, I guess, in some ways than compared to Nietzsche. But um, I appreciate he kind of both of them give permission to to, to look at our own psychology, our own philosophy, and say, okay, I thank you for doing that. Thank you for opening the door. We can look at these questions because otherwise we might never do it, right? If nobody did, well, people would think, well, it's not a thing to question stuff. Right? We can't do that. Let's just go to work, and keep your head down and don't get into too much trouble. But so
Hmm.
willing to open these big questions. So that's good, and it gives us permission to do that because we got them, and this time we've got them too. Like everybody is like, "What the hell?" And we don't have a clear fix on what's going on now. We can't, and so the question is, what is this? It's alive. So yeah.
Hmm. It's the same the same enigma of his time, but it's altered its form as a chameleon like, where it camouflage itself to another form, and how humans have the ability to value, which is a great ability, but it depends on how we value this enigma. And Nietzsche renames that enigma as nihilism, as the camouflage like chameleon that possesses its host.
Are you saying that he's advocating nihilism?
He's not.
No, no, no,
He's a
no.
fervent anti-nihilist.
Right. That's what I would have thought. So I just didn't understand exactly how you were saying that. Right. That I yes, that's true. Yeah.
And what I was saying of that enigma, it ties to this first aphorism of this desire, of this long endeavored, of this pessimistic thought in the air of his time, aka Schopenhauer. If you're familiar with Schopenhauer, he was the first pessimist, or the grandfather of pessimism. But after that came a wave of pessimistic and nihilistic thought from both inside and outside of Germany. And he says at this bottom of this pessimistic thought is the redeemed, half Christian, half German simplicity and narrowness, aka simple mindedness, where people finally present itself on this century, this Schopenhauerian philosophy as the form that really gazed into the Asiatic eye, and from this Asiatic eye down to the world denying of all modes of thought, beyond good and evil, and no longer Buddha and Schopenhauer under the spell of the illusion of morality. So the Asiatic eye that gazes that he's speaking of is the Buddha or Buddhism and Hinduism that's influenced Schopenhauer. And Schopenhauer was a father figure to Nietzsche before Nietzsche radically uh, denounced him as a father figure or as a mentor in some sense. And why does he tie Schopenhauer and Buddhism? He ties it under the name of nihilism, but in despair. For Schopenhauer, he has this will, the will to live, or the will to life. It's that Schopenhauer's will is that it strives pain, in a agonizing form and motion and function too, that causes is the sole cause of pain. Say when you in a state of displeasure, it causes pain. When you're outside your comfort zone, it causes pain. In the brief times we have pleasure, it stops that pain in a brief, painless state. And he says this happens as a cycle, it's cyclical till we die. And that's his pessimistic view of life. Where Nietzsche says, yeah, that happens, but that pain is necessary for one's flourishment as a great tool and a great teacher.
Right. I'm not in a position to really speak to that. The little light, I know, like I know that Schopenhauer was an early adopter of sort of Hindu, maybe Buddhist too, but Hindu and Vedanta thought the ancient wisdom of India.
Hmm.
And that was certainly a like it's very complex. I don't know enough about I have studied that quite a lot, but I don't know the problems with the way that Schopenhauer did it or what Nietzsche thinks were the problems with the way Schopenhauer did it. I actually it's too I don't know enough about the time to
Hmm.
be to be informed with it. But I love that Schopenhauer did that, and I love that Nietzsche is wrestling with that, and that so Schopenhauer's wrestling with it, Nietzsche's wrestling with it, you're wrestling with it, I'm wrestling with it. Those two guys were of the similar time, or a little bit, Schopenhauer a little bit earlier, and they're deeply involved in it, and they've got conflicts, and they're wrestling with the contents of their mind. You and I are both wrestling with the contents of our mind today, doing a similar,
Hmm.
um, trying to get to what is truth, what is real here. And of course, they're using words too in ways um, that those words like will have many, many interpretations. Like Schopenhauer talked a lot about will, but then a central part of Eastern thought is that there is no doer, there is no willer, because it means that um, the God or the divine force is doing everything, and we think it was us that had that's doing it, but it's actually um, in a sense it's happening by itself. We surrender to the flow of it to be like let it happen. We're not the doer. So we don't I don't know enough about the way that those words and concepts were exactly held at the time. I'm curious what you love about what you love in Nietzsche. I was
His playful and at times naive style of writing.
okay. How is it naive?
I say at times naive, and he personally said this in The Joyful Science in his personal notes, where I'm paraphrasing. I'm remembering what he's saying and paraphrasing it for this context.
Yeah,
That I could be at times ignorant, and it shows it too. But in a sense, I do not want to be the accuser of accusers, or accuse those who accuse others. I want to be a yes sayer of life. And that's the naivety.
beautiful.
And
Well, that's innocence in a sense. That's beautiful. He's not
mhm,
presuming that I have the high ground, and I know, and I can tell you're wrong, but he's willing to accept the gift of the other's perception, right? He's not going to place himself above it. He's going to human to human take that. That's
mhm,
what I hear anyway, and that's a really generous impulse, and also I think very true and very philosophically useful. But it's cool that he does it. Yeah,
his conscious innocence and self-reflecting from
yeah,
other people, which, and he says in Zarathustra, his magnum opus, where for me, the redemption of revenge is the same as in a man the bridge over long storms to see the rainbow on the other side. To break down and simplify his poetic and lyrical style, that when man redeems himself from what he thought was casual or common, which became an unconscious innocence, aka it was it was normal, it was the norm. But once he redeemed himself, what was normal to what is now uncommon to him, he sees the rainbow after long storms, aka the arrival of being liberated from what was common.
right. So, are you saying that he's saying that ordinary thought or common thought is just kind of dull and sort of like an unconscious religiousness, believing in God and blah blah blah. Where you don't really, but the sort of unconscious going along with the habit, with the custom. Is that what you mean? But then you can move through that, past that, into a genuine inquiry or a genuine appreciation.
Yes, that's what I was interpreting from what he's saying. And he
Oh,
said earlier in this great work, that that people who do attempt are the attempters at temptation.
the attempters at temptation. I don't understand.
Oh, the attempters at temptation, aka being outside of the box of everybody,
Right. So, what about them?
attempting attempting to be not to everybody else, being the
Right.
same person, imitating.
Trying to be themselves, actually, maybe.
Yeah.
Trying to be yourself, and trying to be true to yourself and your own perception, because we are all different. I mean, we uh, obviously, yeah.
Which ties to what he sees here as the world denying mode of thought of that Schopenhauer and the Buddha aren't people with beyond good and evil taste, but still have this spell and illusion of morality, of this, in this sense, despair.
So, um, yeah. So, are you saying that? Well, I'll just go to the Buddha for a second, or to Eastern thought, because I don't know Schopenhauer and the Buddha together are too much. I can't speak about them, but in the moment. But um, so how? Where is the despair? Where is the despair?
The despair and world denying is both advocate for asceticism or denial of worldly pleasure to stop the will from striving.
Right. Scribing? What's that word?
Striving.
Striving. Stop the will from striving. Right. So okay. So the ascetic impulse, saying that it takes you out of the um, interaction with the world. They're
Hmm.
unwilling to interact with the world, afraid of it effectively. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really, really. I'll just name that. That's a very, very complex subject, because um, whether or not Eastern thought um, says no to the worldly uh, the worldly pleasures, or simply says that they're not wisdom, they're just worldly pleasures. And I would say that's more what the Easterns. That's how I understand the Easterns saying that we're not denying the world, although some do,
Hmm.
but in truth, there's no need to deny the world. It's just that it's not the world is not wisdom. It doesn't start there. Wisdom is before the world. It comes is primary to it.
You're correct. What you said of how it's for multiple months, almost years, of how I thought of the Eastern philosophy before it mangled with the West.
Mingled. I hope not mangled.
Not in that sense, but approached and
Yeah,
faced the
yeah.
um Nietzsche posits an opposite morality here. He did this earlier, which is a rare sighting of him in this work, because after Zarathustra, he said in his autobiography that Zarathustra was thus spoke Zarathustra is my positive philosophy. After this, it's time for my negative portion of it, aka everything that he negates and denies and critiques too. But here he posits a opposite effect, something that's exuberant or alive, a world affirming man who has not only learned to get on and treat with everything that was, but who wants to have it again as it was and in his eternity, an insatiable calling for this de capto. That's Portuguese for the deck, aka that's a reference to get on the boat and sail off. Um, Not only to himself but the whole piece of the play, aka he's describing life as a play, not solely in the theater sense, but the play of dance, vigor, joy, and song, and to participate in this play or the game itself. And that not only this play, but a fundamentally to him, this is the precise play that he wants, and he makes it necessary, but because he needs himself again and again, aka the calling to be oneself again, and makes himself necessary. But at the same time, and this is where he has the opposite effect. And he does this every time too. When he posits a positive, he has the opposite effect. He says, what? And would this not be, at the same time, the vicious cycle of God, or in Latin, circulus visitus Deus? So while people are
Vicious
striving,
circle of God. So, you know,
yeah,
just making a kind of lighthearted comment that if we talk about it's presumptuous or it's like high and mighty of humans to to name God's way as vicious, you know.
hmm
Um, God's way is God's way, and it's before us. So, if we attribute or would say that's vicious, of course, he would say that maybe he has the opposite that he would go to as well. But the the kind circle of God. But there has to be the other side as well. Like God, God or truth, whatever the hell it is primary to our understanding of it. It is what it is, more than what we say it is. Like we don't know.
hmm he sees that as tension. That's why he had this reversal of not advocating but denying of that. Well, no, he advocated and went for this opposite ideal, or a world affirming man that wants everything again and again eternally. This insatiable
Right,
call, the
right,
will driving,
right.
and
So he's advocating for that.
yes, that opposite morality, which he named
Right.
it as extra moral.
Beyond moral or outside of moral. Um, yeah. Um, but we can't like let me see if I got this here. So the the one who is waking up like okay um we can't sorry just read that last little bit of, that or if it's a reading or say it. I lost it
Hey,
there.
where the with this man's joy of the world affirming and wants it or desires it again and again eternally,
Right,
this
right, right,
insatiable call.
right. Thank you. Yeah. So we can't like if we do that, we're trapped there by wanting that again and again and again. Like that catches us up in it. We're slaves to that. Then you want it again and again, you have to have it. Whereas it goes on by itself eternally. We're not the ones who were doing it. It's already the case, right?
hmm
Truth is already being the case forever. Whatever it is, it's always already being that. So if we want it again and again and again, we want our version of it. It doesn't need to be claimed. It doesn't need to be um, you know, desired by us. We're not creating it. We're not doing it. Our will is not. is not the cause of it, and our desire doesn't help it happen. It's desirelessness is a better stance for having it happen. It's just like, yeah, it's happening. It'll always happen, and we bless it and bring it on.
Mm.
Um, I'm not
What
sure.
he's saying, well, to clarify, what he's saying here, this eternal, insatiable calling for it, is once the moment passes, um, do you want that to happen again? Not in this timeline of yours, but once you relive your life. That's where the world affirming comes to play. And while play is relevant, that's the play that he ties this to life. This eternal play happening again and again, which is an idea of Nietzsche's named the eternal reoccurrence.
Right. Well, that's not Nietzsche's. It's Nietzsche too believed that, but it's very much the foundation of Eastern thought, for example.
Hmm.
Um, and also even in Christian thought, they'd say that the kingdom of God is eternal and it's always been there. No, it's continue. Those spiritual truths are are forever. You know,
Hmm.
they endure. They endure.
And well, to expand or add to what you're saying here, the foreverness or the eternity, Nietzsche adds this vicious cycle of God as the tension to this eternal calling. Do you want while there's this tension happening, do you still want it?
You can't escape it. You can't escape. It's a bitch. In other words, it, it's
To
it's
simply say.
it got you right.
Uh-huh.
Let we can't escape life. Can't live with it, and we can't live without it. It's like what are we going to do? But that's in a way that is the way in which reality forces growth on us, right?
Yes.
We can't sleep because somebody like Nietzsche will come along and start, banging on the door and shaking you and say, "Wake up!" if you're trying to sleep. And if you do it too much, you don't appreciate. Like if you have too much will in it, you don't appreciate that it's already present. It's already given us. It's being and truth are already there. They're
Hmm.
already given.
The destiny's inside you, but it's not erupting.
It erupts when it erupts, or it's silent when it's silent. It's we can say it's inside us, but it's inside reality. It's just there.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're inside it. We're inside it. This is truth to say. That's
And
truth to say.
it's inside us.
Or we're inside it.
I tie
Which
the
one?
opposites together.
Yeah, they're not really different. They're not really different. Which is you know th- that brings us back to where we were. Where we'd been starting about you know beyond good and evil. Good and evil wants this, but not that. We That's bad. This is good. We're caught in that duality. But if we say it's only inside us or
Hmm.
outside, it's only outside of us, that's playing the duality too. Like we're in it. We're already in reality. We're already fully in it, and we can't be. Yeah, we're mysteriously inside it, and our own understanding, which seems to be inside us.
Hmm.
See, I look at the room, but the room seems to be outside me. But I look at my inside myself, and that seems to be inside me. But is the world is the world really out there, or is it a function of my perception? We know now pretty much that the world is a function of our perception. We don't actually see what's um, we well when we see it, we think it's outside, but it is our perception that is creating it. Do you think that's true?
And what you're saying does transfer to the next aphorism beautifully too, where the strength of a spiritual man, the sight and insight at distance has this space around him which expands, which the world grows deeper. ever new stars, ever new images, and enigmas come to this view. But here's the 180. Perhaps everything on which the spirit's eye has exercised its profundity and acuteness has been an opportunity to exercise the game of something for children and childishness. Childishness, in this sense, is use the word naivety, being outlandish, versus how Nietzsche sees children as innocent, forgetting, playful, curious, experimental, while creative too. And that's a to him that's a crucial part that we leave once we're in adulthood or become obedient and moderate in the eyes of society, which I prefer a balance of maturity and having that child inside me. What's your thoughts of that?
Yeah. um, well, the child has an innocent perception of wonder and play and joy, and then we lose it as we try to live our lives, and we naturally grow out of that and trying to understand. We try to enter into the complexity of the world, and we try to understand it,
Mm-hmm.
and then we go through a struggle around that, and if we're if we're able to do it, if we're if we're if our struggles bear fruit, we can become innocent again, and we can become mature and surrendered to the the larger reality, the whole of reality,
The
not
long term.
the eternal reality or the reality, but we the child the child can only see it as a child. Then the growing man can only see it as the growing man, and then the at a certain point we can learn new ways of perceiving and seeing. There is a um, new vistas, new
Mm-hmm.
mountaintops to see farther from. But most of us get to a certain point not long after childhood and say, that's good enough. I understand reality now. I'm done. I'm just going to go live my life and see what the next movies are on. And I'm just going to do that. We stop. But we can grow past that to back to the innocence, back to the clarity, um, or back to the simplicity of that, um, and not have to strive or will because we are knowing it or receiving it. And that's an ancient tradition that people have seen that possibility exists. And Nietzsche is working on it, right? Nietzsche's a part of it. He's in that stream.
That's that's true. And to add what you're saying of the part of when we enter adulthood, we say, "Yeah, we know everything. I can forget the child. It's time for me to move forward." This ties perfectly with what he said of the most serious concepts that we are embedded with have this most strife and suffering. The concepts of God and sin will one day seem to us of no more importance than a child's toy and troubles as it would seem to an old man. This isn't ridicule of you in this sense.
And
and
I get
perhaps and perhaps old man, he said in air quotes, will then have a need of another toy and other troubles, still enough of a child, an eternal child, which fits beautifully what you said.
I mean, I think that relatively speaking, few old people, man or woman, are have busted the basic illusion of of you know got past their fascination with good and evil. You know, most of us are stuck in it. It's
Mm-hmm.
possible, but it takes a lot of understanding, which we're blessed to have, and our labors help, and divine assistance helps. Who knows what it is that helps, but it happens when it happens, and it doesn't happen when it doesn't happen.
And that ties what he would say too of the concepts that have this unnecessary strife and pain, and he ties sin and God to the concept to what you're saying and he's saying. In this sense, not at a face value of God and sin, but that branches off and to the morality of the morality in today's mentality, or in his time, which continued forward and after, well, before his time too, in the medieval ages and the Christianization of Europe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, there's so much in here, Gregory. So much, man. And I'm curious. Like, I think it would be. I love that you're exploring philosophy and wanting to do that. I'm not a philosopher, but I'm interested in,
I'm
you
not
know,
either.
right. But we are interested in those eternal questions, and we have a right to be interested in them and to explore them.
Every time.
Yeah, and to find what's true for us. I mean, I'm not a professional philosopher. Like I'm not. There's the whole world of human seeking and wisdom is too big. But I've been more interested in Eastern stuff and also Christian stuff, but the more spiritual ways. Like I grew up in a very conventional Christian uh, uh, household, and I bought it, but I'm trying to understand what's true in there because some parts of it are true. Some parts of, well, trying to separate the truth from the convention, I guess I'll say, or what no longer works, what no longer, because in in Europe way back there was a very living, very very vivid, active Christian spirit which was actually alive, in which many
Yes.
many men and many warriors deeply got and fought very, very hard in, and was incredible history. But that got lost over, it's the process of time and modernity took it away. And Nietzsche was there to wake up, at the time of that loss and to call attention to it and create a scandal and to say we've lost track trying to find
Hmm.
it. So there's a whole tradition of waking up in that, right? We're part of that tradition in our little way.
I'm dumbfounded with what you're saying. I have. I'm curious if you've read Beyond Good and Evil or not, because what you're saying like moves to after the first half of Aphorism 58. Like truly,
I'm on
Y-
track. I'm on track with one step ahead. Is that what you're telling me?
you're three
At
for
least the
three.
way we got set up right now.
This isn't script, people. There's no paper in front of us. Well, there's a work in front of me, but there isn't a paper or script in front of Andrew. It's from personal experience of his and his study of history.
Or my study of religion and stuff, whatever.
Hmm.
But or my study of my own life, right? My own wandering life. So yeah.
Hmm.
I just want to tell
But
you, man, we can come back another time, but I've gotta go pretty soon. I'm gonna be talking with somebody in 10 minutes, so I gotta do a few
oh,
things before.
no worries. I'll finish this solo.
Are you good? Okay,
Yes,
thanks
sir.
everybody. Remember, study hard, everybody, to find out what truth really is for yourself, because it makes a difference. So, I'm kidding,
Yes,
man.
sir.
Take care. Thank
Appreciate
you.
you. Appreciate you, Andrew, once again. See you
Thanks.
next time.
Yes, great to see you. Cheers, man.
To continue solo, my audience. And Andrew was almost precise what he was saying. Of we as it been observed to what extent a genuine religious life, both for its favorite labor of microscopic self examination and gentle composure of what's called its prayer or meditation in some sense, and which is a constant readiness for the coming of God. This is similar to what he would say in the Antichrist, where he has this mutual love and respect for Jesus of Nazareth, because while he was physically a slave to the Roman Empire, but he was mentally and physically different from every singular person. In this sense of the constant readiness for the coming of God, Jesus received that salvation of heaven inside of him. And he would say, you would have to go through me to see the Father, my Father, our Father. And to me, that's Jesus saying of I don't worship me, but I'm a guidance to the coming of God and the salvation of heaven inside, not a physical realm. But it continues forward, requires external leisure, or some leisure. I mean leisure with a good conscience, inherited by blood, which is not altogether unfamiliar with the aristocratic idea that work degrades. That is to say, what made soul and body common. And the constantly modern, noisy, time consuming, proud, stupidly industriousness of education prepares precisely for this unbelief more than anything else does. To simply say that that he's praising and advocating for leisure time, which itself negates the idea of ideologies, say socialism, leveling everybody to equality or egalitarianism. And Nietzsche's saying that this leisure time with the good conscience, the inherited from blood, is something that's not unfamiliar with the aristocratic idea of odium or leisure time or free time. But this has degraded to the commonality of what is the soul and body, aka that is replicated in today, both physically and mentally with their philosophy. The modern, noisy, time-consuming, proud, stupidly industrious education, and perhaps the unbelief more than anything else, among those in Germany, for example, who nowadays live without religion, I find people whose free thinking is of differing kinds of origins, but above all, a majority of those in whom industriousness from generation to generation has exhausted the religious instinct. And now it has become the idea that religion are supposed to be for, and as it were, merely a registered existence in the world of something that's dumb, amazed. To simply say the Industrial Revolution, the desire for work's sake, to do something for the sake of doing something. Nietzsche would disagree, and he saw this in the United States and England too, and slowly arriving at Germany because Germans love their steel. He said that this is the breathless impatience for work. That's how he describes the Industrial Revolution plus the emerging of capitalism. Which for this religious instinct, and to define religion of the origin of religion in Latin, to bind, revere, and obligation. In this sense, if you tie it to what Ralph Waldo Emerson said of prayer, and Nietzsche too, where it's the leisure time of being with oneself, either in a spiritual area, before the noise of the crowd comes in to perturb and disrupt the reverence that the coming of some entity or the ascendance of your spirit to a higher self. And now the air quote free thinkers love this modern noise, time consuming, and now they propagate this industrious education of the breathless impatience for work. aka work, 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 work. And now they, at the same time, propagate free thinking inside the work. Which is my question. For people working, do you freely think? Is there leisure time? And this happens for generation and generation to exhaust that religious instinct of binding not solely a community, but binding yourself to a heightened spiritual level. In this sense, Nietzsche says spiritual as the liberating factor of the free spirits for their journey. Thus, that's the spiritual journey that he's saying here, which people misinterpret every time. Why the free spirit? So there's a spirit inside us that needs to be pure. No, 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 no. He says that's religious fiction. What's what's not fictitious is this religious and spiritual journey of that liberation from modernity, or shun the light on the darkness which these people crept in. With Andrew and I's conversation the entire time, it covered the second half of 58. Beautifully, beautifully covered the second half of 58. And now 59. 59's a 59 similar to the entirety of this work in the religious perspective. Again, he has seen deeply into the world, who knows that wisdom there is in fact that men are superficial. It is their instinct for preservation, and we're familiar with preservation, which teaches them to be fickle, light, and false, aka mediocre. Here and there among philosophers as the artists, the passionate and exaggerated worship for this pure form, aka cleansing the soul, in which he includes here, no, he includes in the last aphorism the mild contempt to the uncleanliness. Now that part, that sentence, you'll see it again in Genealogy and Morals, but be patient. Let us not doubt that he who needs the cult of surfaces attempt to get beneath the calamitous extent of some time or another, aka to be superficial, to be this have this instinct of despair, to preserve yourself, the will to despair. Perhaps there might even exist an order of rank in order to get to get these burnt children, these born artists who can find pleasure in life only in the intention of falsifying its image, as it were a long time drawn out revenge on life, not a physically burnt and scorched child. That was my initial thoughts. But the ball of fire inside of a child, or inside of everybody, in, and outside of everybody in the cosmos, the earth, nature, etc., etc. It's the nature of nature, the double definition of nature. One could determine. Oh, what I was. Nietzsche says that's the born artist's true pleasure in life, while falsifying image, aka not not truly falsifying in a soft lie and naive sense, but reflecting the fire that's rested beneath this order of rank that he's describing, that's released in the world. But this energy was revenge on life. Hence why this cult of surfaces and the attempt to worsen and dig deeper beneath the surface level to bury to bury uh, this passionate instinct of theirs while having the will to despair or self-preservation. Plus, the vengeance or resentment on life. If they couldn't act it physically in the world, they did it in false imaginations. The degree to which life has been spoiled for them by the extent to which they want to see its image falsified, attuned, and made otherworldly divine. Is practically what I said. One could include the hominis religiosi, aka the religious person, among the artists as their highest rank. It is the profound suspicion fear of this incurable pessimism, which compels the whole millennia to cling their teeth to the interpretation of said religion. The fear born of that instinct which senses that one might get hold of the truth oh, too soon before mankind was sufficiently strong, hard, and an artist. Pity, the life in God, would, viewed in this life, appear as the subtlest and ultimate product of the fear of truth. As the artist worship and intoxication before the most constant of falsifications, this will of inversion of truth, the untruth at any price. To simply say what he's saying here is, while they've falsified for this other divine world, they place the religious person, say a priest, as the highest rank among this life, while at the same time, this is the fear of pessimism, which compels the entire millennia for this religious interpretation. Tie that to what Andrew and I said in Aphorism 56 with pessimism. And that this fear-born instinct or reactive instinct that's inculcated grabs the truth too soon, aka this form of a religious form of pre-established orchestrated truth that's a doctrine and step-by-step guide to the objective outside of this fickle, vile, fickle, erroneous, and flawed world. And as he said, before mankind, they were strong, solid. They were artists till the arrival of pity. This is his interpretation of pity for, I think, a fourth time in this work. That the life in God is viewed in light, appeared as a subtlest and the source product of this fear of truth. He's tying it to where society was strong, solid, and artistic, uh, artistic and violent individuals before this revaluated form of truth. The artists worship and intoxicate the falsification, aka just brainwashing, dogmatically brainwash this inversion of truth to a form of untruth. So the dogmatic persistence of moving this truth that in the pre-moral era now is untruth in the moral era, and that the fear of God in the form of pity is this truth. Perhaps there has still up now been no final way of making man himself more beautiful than pity. Through pity, man can become to get great at the degree of art, surface, play of colors, goodness, and that no longer suffers at the sight of him. That's not a compliment, nor a positive message. That is his sarcasm, and how he sees man being inverted to an animal or still ape. Appreciate to Andrew, as I said earlier. There's a link in the description to his blog and the Men's Academy that he and I are still reigning in. Amor fati. Love your fate.